I'm going to share exactly how I would start email marketing from scratch in 2026 using Klaviyo. Now, this isn't just theory. Our agency generates millions of dollars per month in email marketing revenue for D2C brands. And here's what I've learned. Most 7- and 8-figure D2C brands are either doing email haphazardly and just whenever they have the time, or they're working with agencies who just don't understand their brand and are producing very mediocre results. Now, in this video, I'm going to break down the exact step-by-step that I would use if I was starting from scratch in 2026, including the 3 flows that can generate 15% of your revenue alone, and the exact segmentation strategy that has doubled open rates for some of our clients. So here's what you need to know before we dive into all of the technical things in Klaviyo. The first is just the difference between flows and campaigns. Flows are automated sequences that are triggered by a certain behavior or certain action that someone takes. Think adding to cart, checking out a product page, or maybe even just joining your list. Around 30 to 60% of your overall revenue from email should come from your flows. Now, campaigns, on the other hand, are one-off sends. Think a product spotlight, a new product launch, a sale, or a Black Friday promotion. These are sent to specific segments and specific lists. Now, as we get further along into 2026, there's a few things you want to be really well aware of. The first is just if you don't have a branded setting domain, make sure you set that up. Most platforms already require this, so make sure you do that if you haven't already. The second thing is that honestly, AI tools are being used a lot more with inbox management. So what this means for you is you need to make sure that your inbox deliverability is as good as humanly possible. And the third piece is segmentation. This is really, really important because there's so much volume in people's inboxes. We want to make sure that we're hitting the right people at the right time with the right message. Gone are the days that you can just batch and blast every single person on your list and hope that things just go well. We want to make sure that the people on our list are being treated well and that engagement rates remain high. So with that being said, your goal for 2026 and onward should be to generate 30 to 40% of your revenue from email. Honestly, with doing this, you'll be able to reduce some of your ad platform reliance because while ads are super, super important, like you need traffic and email as an ecosystem will not exist if you do not have traffic. But if you're 100% reliant on one platform, you are 100% at risk to that platform. If your ad account goes down, you're screwed, right? So that's why email is a really great backup plan, especially over the long term when you can build up a really engaged email list and really engaged segments so that you're generating a ton of revenue off the back of those campaigns instead of just off the back of flows. Now, a lot of brands get stuck below the 20% of revenue from email mark. These are just a few examples of clients that we work with, and we've generated like millions and millions of dollars for these clients. This one is in the last 4 months, we generated $3.1 million. It's a 41%. This one was 42% of their overall revenue and 1.7 million. And then this one was 47% and 250,000 over the last 3 months or during Q4. So here's the problem I see with so many 7- and 8-figure D2C brands. They're doing email one of 3 ways. Either haphazardly, i.e. they're just writing emails whenever they have the time. 2, they're doing batch and blast, which means they're sending the exact same emails to every single person on their list. Or 3, they have an agency who just doesn't get it and is producing mediocre results with 0 brand alignment. The cost of doing this is one of the things that a lot of people don't really realize, and that is like one of the biggest things is deliverability. So deliverability drops 2 to 3% every single month when you have these poor practices, right? If you're sending content that is not super engaging to people, if you're constantly getting unsubscribes, if you're constantly getting people mark your email as spam, and if your email strategy is just kind of like spammy, you're not going to see a lot of these things immediately, but over the course of time, over the course of a year, over the course of 6 months, 18 months, whatever it might be, you're going to see those impacts. And those micro impacts, those 2 to 3% changes add up over time, right? So what you'll see, and one of the lagging indicators of this is open rates falling below 30%. So they should be well above 40, they don't need to always be way above 40%. Like they don't need to be like 50, 60%, but you should be consistently shooting for 40% plus. And on your more engaged segments, you should be shooting for over 50%. If you're getting sub 30%, that's an issue and probably means you're leaving hundreds of thousands of dollars on the table every single month. Okay, so here's how to set things up from scratch. And there's 5 different steps here that you're gonna wanna master so that you can start getting results like these. The first thing is just your foundation setup. And I'm gonna walk through that in just a moment here. But basically that's setting up your branded setting domain and setting up your Shopify integration. Step 2 is going to be segmentation strategy. So looking at your engaged versus the unengaged split. This will help you double open rates very, very quickly. Step 3 is going to be your top 4 revenue producing flows, the welcome series, the abandoned checkout, browse abandonment, and post purchase. And step 4 is going to be your campaign strategy. This is a strategy that we use for literally every single one of our clients, and how we send 3, 4, 5, 6, sometimes even 7 or 8 emails per week without killing deliverability. And finally, the testing strategy that we use to help just honestly maximize our results. Because at the end of the day, like, while we do this day in and day out, we're always surprised. Well, we're not always surprised, but we're sometimes surprised at which tests perform better than others, right? So we want to test things and also see just what resonates best with our clients' audiences, because every brand is a little bit different. Okay, so the first thing you're going to want to do is set up the foundation. So the branded sending domain is really, really important. And honestly, Klaviyo has a really good how-to on this. Just search for how to set up the branded sending domain on Klaviyo, and you're going to see exactly, like, they're going to give you an exact walkthrough on how to set this up for yourself. This is really, really important. Set this up right away before you send a single email. Set this up and get that going. The second piece is just your Shopify integration. Now, this is, again, very, very easy. All you need to do is go into your Klaviyo settings, go to integrations, go to Shopify, and then connect your store. I'm not going to show you exactly how to do this because it is very, very straightforward. And again, there's also a Klaviyo walkthrough on exactly how to do this as well. So the next piece is your pop-up setup. So the pop-up is really, really important, and honestly, one of the most overlooked opportunities for you to improve your email marketing by pretty much everyone, not only agencies, but also brands. The reason that the pop-up is so important is because it helps you capture 5 to 10% of visitors, sometimes upwards of 15% of your website visitors during Q4, and convert those people into email subscribers. The second thing is it feeds your high ROI flows pretty much immediately. And third, it builds your own audience. Again, instead of renting from Facebook and Google, you're building this owned audience up. So the math here, honestly, is pretty crazy. If you increase your opt-in rate from 3% to 6%, that is 100% more subscribers, which means 100% more flow revenue and 100% larger campaign audience. So the layout that we use is a teaser, email step, SMS step, and then thank you. Let me show you exactly what this looks like. So this is exactly what the pop-up should look like. We actually tend to gather zero-party data in that first step. So it's just really like a teaser like this. If you don't want to gather zero-party data, you don't have to, but I recommend doing it because it's a great place for you to learn a little bit more about your customers. So that would be step 1. Step 2 would just be basically your email gathering step. Step 3 would be the phone number, and then step 4 is that thank you page. Now, step 3 is your top 4 highest impact flows. These 4 flows alone can generate 20% of your revenue overall, not just 20% from email. These are super, super high revenue producing flows. First is your welcome series. Second is your abandoned cart or abandoned checkout. Third is your browse abandonment. And then fourth is your post purchase. Now, after auditing literally hundreds of Klaviyo accounts, these flows, like I said, account for at least 50% of your email flow revenue in almost every single brand I've ever audited. So let me break down each one of these. The first flow is the welcome series, and this is basically just triggered when someone joins your newsletter list. The sequence looks a little bit something like this. So email 1 is going to be deliver the offer, and it's going to be a brand intro. Email 2 is going to be an emotional connection, and then offer a reminder here, just being like, hey, like, don't forget about your 10% off type of thing. Email 3 is going to be education. So this could be product benefits, it could be brand story, and then another offer reminder. Depending on how discount forward and like offer forward you are, you may want to have this at the bottom of the email or maybe at the top of the email. It kind of just depends on what floats your boat there. Email 4 is going to be social proof and top sellers. Email 5 is going to be urgency and then also a final offer reminder. This is really, really important. And honestly, I would recommend having this so that it actually does in fact expire instead of just having fake urgency, because people will catch on to that. And then email 6 is a product quiz. If people still have not purchased, we want to see what they actually want and why they haven't purchased yet. Now, in terms of expected results, we're looking for open rates above 50%. We're looking for click rates above 10% on that first email. And conversion rates is really going to depend on your AOV. Like if you've got a super high AOV, your conversion rate is not going to be 20%. If you've got a super low AOV, it should be very high. It should be like 10, 15, 20% most likely. Again, though, it kind of depends on the offer, kind of depends on your brand, but that's the expected results that we usually have with our clients. Okay, so in order to set this up on Klaviyo, all you need to do is go into flows on the left-hand side here. You want to go to create flow, and this is just dummy account. Then you can go in here and just search for welcome, and you're going to be prompted with a couple of different options here. So you're going to be like, it's going to be like customer versus non-customer. You can select any one of these. I recommend just selecting probably the standard one. And then what you want to do is make sure you select the correct trigger here. So the trigger should be when someone is added to a certain list, and we usually call it the newsletter list. So we're going to click that, use the template, and then I'm gonna pause my screen here just for a moment. And then it's gonna look something like this. So basically you're gonna have a trigger here where people are added to the list. You're gonna wanna add those profile filters on, which is placed order 0 times, checkout started 0 times, email doesn't contain plus, and bounce email 0 times since starting this flow. We don't want any re-entry either, so we're gonna say no re-entry here. And then you're gonna see the first email goes out immediately. You'll see the time delay is gonna depend on the brand, but that first email will go out immediately. You'll wait a day, you'll send that second email, and then you'll continue down that same path that I just talked about. Okay, so the second flow here is gonna be the abandoned checkout flow. And the trigger here is when someone started checkout, not just when someone added to cart, but when someone actually started the checkout. So the flow filters you're gonna wanna have here are placed order 0 times since starting the flow and has not been in the flow in the last 30 days. We usually start with a 4 to 5 email sequence, and then we might build upon that as we see results come in. But the first email is super simple. Usually it's going to be anywhere from like 15 minutes to 60 minutes after someone has initiated checkout and not purchased. It's going to be a simple reminder with no discount. The second email is going to be social proof and reviews. That's going to be 22 to 24 hours after. And then the third email is going to be addressing objections. So this could be anything from like shipping, returns, trust, whatever objections that people might have based off of your brand. This is the important part, because what one person, like one brand might have it as an objection might be completely different than another brand. Email 4 is just going to be a small discount. This is going to go out after about 3 days, and it's just going to be trying to handle that price objection. Now, it could be a discount, or it could actually be a free gift or something like that as well. Email 5 is going to be either a deeper discount, or oftentimes what we'll do is we'll just create a little bit more urgency behind that discount, especially if we can make it expire. And then finally, we get to email 6 and email 7, email 8, etc. This is really just going to depend on the product offering and how well it's doing. So we're going to tailor things based off of that for the brand. Now, what I kind of alluded to there is just we're going to want to deal with different objections based off of where people are at in the customer journey and based off of what people's objections might be for your brand too. So if someone initiated checkout but they didn't purchase, they know what they want. The objections they might have are, hey, they got distracted, which is handled in email 1. They don't trust you, right? Which is handled with new reviews, social proof, that type of thing. Maybe they have questions. This is where the objection piece is going to vary depending on your brand, but this is where we might have FAQs, we might have USPs, we might have and other objections that we might want to deal with here. And then the fourth piece is just dealing with that price objection, as I mentioned. Fifth is just dealing with that uncertainty, so making things a little bit more urgent here. And our rule of thumb is usually if the placed order rate is above 1%, then we keep the flow going. So this is an example of a flow where we started with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we kept building upon that. So we actually built out to 8 emails in this abandoned checkout sequence. And the issue, and the reason we actually turned it off and why it's in draft mode right now is kind of irrelevant. It's just due to some issues with the product availability and whatnot. However, this is a really great strategy to use if we're seeing those purchase rates above 1%. Okay, so the third flow here that I want to review is the browse abandonment flow. And this is basically when someone viewed a product, but didn't add to cart, didn't initiate checkout, and did not purchase. The sequence here is relatively similar to the abandoned checkout, but it's going to be handling a different objection because someone clearly isn't quite sure what they want yet. So what we want to do is, number 1, a simple reminder. This is going to be going out not immediately after, but this is going to be anywhere from like 30 to 60 minutes after. And then we're going to have email 2, which is going out day 2. This again is going to depend on products, product categories. But what we might do here is feature different bestsellers, talk about why their product selection was really great, whatever that might be. It really depends on the category that the brand is in and also what kind of products they actually offer. If it's a one product store, it's going to be totally different than if it's a multi-product store. Email 3 is going to be an incentive, and then email 4 is just going to be an incentive reminder. This is optional, but these work really, really well, especially when you're trying to get people across the line. Now, the fourth email sequence here that we're going to focus on is going to be the post-purchase flow. The trigger here is going to be placed order, and the sequence is going to kind of depend on shipping times, but email 1 should go out immediately. So this should be order confirmation and what to expect. After that, this is where most brands and most agencies kind of drop the ball, because email 2, we should be like providing some hype, getting people excited, getting people fired up about receiving their product. This isn't the time to like fall back and be like, okay, cool, we got your money, we're all good. This is the time where you want to validate people's purchase and make sure that they actually get super excited about it. Email 3 is going to be product tips and how to use. Again, this is going to be really dependent on what you're selling. For example, if you're selling supplements, it's going to make sense to have something like how to use. If you're selling a t-shirt, it probably doesn't make sense because people are probably not that dumb and they know how to use a bloody t-shirt, right? Email 4 is going to be a review request. And that's just going to be, we want to make sure that that's timed after the delivery. This is really important because if you get a review request and you haven't got the product, that's going to be super annoying. You'll be like, bro, I haven't got it yet. I have no idea. Email 5 is going to be a cross-sell and upsell recommendation. And then email 6 is going to be a replenishment reminder if applicable. Our goal here is to increase your AOV and increase your 90-day LTV. This should be kind of your approach with this strategy. And like really our goal is, can we make sure that people are actually achieving their desired result here? Now, as I mentioned, step 4 is going to be your segmentation strategy. So this is really, really important. Before we even get to starting with campaigns, we need to talk about who those campaigns are actually going to. So all you need to do is go into lists and segments, go to create a segment. And then what I'd recommend creating is your 30, 60, 90-day engaged non-purchasers and your 30, 60, 90-day opened clickers, which are your engaged purchasers. Let me show you exactly how to do that. So we call this the 90-day engaged lead segment, which is basically like non-purchasers. And what that looks like is someone who has opened an email at least once in the last 90 days, or they've clicked an email at least once in the last 90 days, and they can receive email marketing because they're subscribed. And they also placed order 0 times overall time. That's the lead component. Now, if I wanted to change that to purchasers, that would be engaged purchasers, right? And the important thing here is the difference between and or, right? So if you say opened an email in the last 90 days and they also clicked an email, that means they have to have done both things. However, we're trying to just understand, and we want to create the largest segment possible for the purposes of this. We want to understand like who is opened and who is clicked, not who has done both, right? So it's really important to consider that, especially when you're using exclusions or negative segments. It's really important to consider that and look at like, okay, what does this actually mean, right? Because if you're like, they haven't opened an email in the last 90 days and they haven't clicked an email in the last 90 days, it starts to become a little bit more convoluted. So you just want to make sure this is something you consider as you're building out these segments. Now, this is going to double your open rates because generic sends to your full list are going to generate around 20% open rates, maybe 25% open rates. However, sending to engaged segments, especially like if you're looking at a 30, 60, 90-day engaged, we often see open rates way above that, like 40%, 50%, 60%, sometimes 70 or 80%, depending on the size of the audience and depending on how engaged the list is as well. Now, once you've dialed that in, the next piece is your campaign strategy. So the rule here is only send campaigns to your engaged segments. It's really, really important that you're excluding anyone who is not engaged and you're just using segments like the one I just showed you. Now, in order to set up a campaign, all you need to do is go to campaigns, go to create, select your engaged segment, and then build an optimized design. So once you've selected the engaged segment and the people who you want to exclude, then you need to go ahead and build an optimized design. Now, this is really important, and honestly, a lot of brands get this wrong too, but you need to make sure there is text in your email design and also that there's alt text on images as well. This will help to improve your open rates. Finally, you just have to schedule it. Now, what I'd recommend using, if you have enough data on it, use smart sending. If you don't, I'd recommend testing your different send times. So here's a high level frequency guide that you can use when you're planning your email campaign calendar. Your engaged subscribers should be able to, receive emails 3 to 4 times per week. Your warm subscribers should be receiving 1 to 2 times per week. And then your cold people should be receiving basically once a month or maybe once every couple of months or something along those lines, just to try to win those people back. One thing to note here is you will always have unsubscribes. Some brands focus way too much of their energy on trying to decrease the unsubscribe rates when, obviously you don't want them to be astronomically high, but trying to decrease unsubscribe rates, especially by sending less emails, is a complete waste of time and energy. I would highly recommend just looking to make sure you're within a reasonable realm for the unsubscribe rates, but don't bother trying to get it to 0 because it will never be 0. Okay, so finally here we've got to our testing framework. Now the testing framework that we use is based off of the highest leverage thing to the lowest leverage thing. The first thing we want to test is the offer. The second is going to be your subject lines. The third is going to be your segments. The fourth is going to be your headlines. The fifth is going to be your send times. And then finally, we're going to test email content. The thought process behind all of this is, at the end of the day, the offer is going to be a huge component because that's going to impact your open rates, your click rates, and your conversion rates. But your subject lines are going to impact your open rates, right? Same with your segments. Your segments are also going to impact your open rates. So what we want to consider there is, like, if we don't have people opening the email, if we don't have as many people opening up the email, it doesn't really matter what's in the email in and of itself. If we have 0 people opening, it doesn't matter. Or if we have 10% of people opening and we turn that to 20% of people opening, then we're effectively doubling the amount of people who are opening the email and doubling the amount of people who should be clicking on the email as well, right? So we want to look at that from like a top-down approach and test based off of that. Now, if you want to take your flows to the next level, here's some conditional splits that you can use. Once the basics have been running for a while, here's how you can layer in some conditional splits. The first is based off of cart value. So it could be like over $100, or it could be over a certain tier. They get VIP treatment, or maybe there's no discount. Below $50, maybe there's a discount earlier in the sequence or something like that. Second would be product or category. So you might want different messaging depending on the different product lines. For example, if you're selling protein powder versus a weight loss supplement, you're going to want different messaging based off of that. The third would be based off of customer type. So you could segment based off of first time, returning customers, like 2-time, 3-time, VIP customers, etc. And you might also want to segment based off of zero-party data that you collect, right? So if someone is looking for a certain solution from your product, you might want to tailor that messaging accordingly based off of their preferences or based off of their goals and what they're really looking for. Now, a high-level recap here of best practices is, number 1, turn off smart sending for your core flows. 2, keep your copy concise and focused. 3 is just regularly A/B test things. You should be always running at least one test. Mobile optimization is the most important, because if you're not optimizing for mobile, you're missing out on 60, 70, potentially 80% of people. A lot of brands just optimize for desktop or design for desktop, and that's not the best approach. Zero-party data is a very, very powerful thing to use too. Clean your list regularly. This is really, really important. And monitor your deliverability metrics weekly. Make sure you're not seeing any anomalies. Make sure your deliverability score isn't going way down. And the benchmarks that you should shoot for is 40% open rates on your engaged segments and email revenue anywhere from 30 to 40% of your total store revenue. So hopefully this provided a ton of value for you guys. If I was starting off with Klaviyo in 2026, this is exactly how I would start. My call to action to you is, if you do have a 7 or 8 figure D2C brand and you don't want to deal with all this stuff yourself, I'd invite you to apply to work with us below. There's a link below this video where you can apply for a free audit. I'll build you out a strategy that is custom to your brand if you do qualify. Now, we only work with brands who are doing between $3 and $30 million per year. So if that sounds like you, feel free to apply below, and I hope to chat with you soon. Thanks so much.